And good morning, everyone, this fine Thursday morning, and welcome to today's event, which is titled Escape Spreadsheet Chaos, Build Intelligent Software That Scales. So before we begin, just some very quick housekeeping, and we got plenty of questions from the audience already and plenty of questions of our own. If you do have any questions, do please drop them in the chat, and we will endeavor to get to them before the end of the day's discussion. So again, hello everyone, and a warm welcome. So we're all here today because we share a common problem. We use spreadsheets every day to power critical business processes, despite the chaos that they can cause. Now, to help us unpack this today, I'm very happy to be joined by Martin Strickland, the CEO of the intelligent software development company, Clear Dynamics, and Dan Baker, Senior Solution Engineer. Now, Martin, thanks for being here. Daniel, again, thanks for being here. Martin, let's just jump right into it. Are there really that many companies using spreadsheets to power mission critical processes?
Yeah, hey, Steve, great question. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's one of the biggest paradoxes in modern business. We live in this world of AI, of cloud computing, of instant everything. Yet so many of our most critical financial models, our regulatory reports, or our workflows are still running on, you guessed it, spreadsheet. Almost 90% of organizations are still using spreadsheets in critical processes. It's like running a nuclear power plant with a calculator, or building a skyscraper on plywood. It's always good until it isn't, and then we all know about it. So as Steve said, we're an intelligent software company that loves this problem. We're passionate about it. We love taking your processes, your spreadsheets, and giving them the solid foundations that they deserve. So just quickly, before we get into the meat of today, what do? We uncover that hidden logic that's hidden in your spreadsheet, the logic that you've spent years perfecting, and automatically construct secure, scalable, and intelligent software applications to replace it. No more worries about fat thumbs or where your Excel spreadsheets might end up.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. So what is this spreadsheet trap?
Yeah, that was the topic of today's conversation. So the trap is what happens when spreadsheets are used as part of the process that needs to scale and are critical to your business. They're the tools that were provided an easy start because they're very easy to build. Everyone loves Excel. It's easy to get spreadsheets together, but they've now become a fragile, ungoverned roadblock to growth. For the people who use it, it's becoming a source of daily frustration, repeated transferring of data from one spreadsheet to the other, and manual rework. It's a trap because the business is now reliant on something that they can't scale. And in many cases, the business knows they've got a problem. They want to do something about it, but the solution's a little bit hard given the pressures on the technology team.
Yeah, no, of course. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So what are the issues your customers run into as they scale the business and built on spreadsheet processes?
Yeah, look, there are 4 issues that we typically think about, and I think this audience should look at, like that safe spreadsheet. I'd encourage everyone to look at it with these 4 windows. The first is risk, the second is regulation, the third is financial, and the final one is scalability. And the problem with these issues is they're completely invisible until they aren't. And that's when the house of cards comes spectacularly falling down. I don't want to go back to the nuclear power plant, but you kind of get where we're coming from. I know this is a little boring, but these issues are what keeps me awake as the CEO of a business that tries not to use Excel spreadsheets, but in some cases we just have to. The first is risk and compliance. The problem is that spreadsheets lack audit trails. It's almost impossible to understand what's gone on in the past to get you to where you've got to. So when something goes wrong, how do you work out what has gone wrong and root cause the problem and then solve it? Almost 68% of spreadsheet related data breaches have typically come from human error. like accidental disclosures, sharing the files. So risk is a real issue. So the first question always is, what's the risk that we're really sitting on? The second is regulatory challenges. We're all facing faster and faster changing in regulation. What are we doing to keep our spreadsheets up to date with what's changing? That means changing the macros, changing the workflow, changing the spreadsheets themselves. There's a lot to do, and that's hard. Uh, for example, there's a new regulation coming out of the Robo-Debt Royal Commission. You may have heard about it, that in 2026, anybody who's using automation will have to involve their customer in the automated decision-making process. So I think
Mm,
spreadsheets are going to really struggle dealing with that next year. Of
yeah.
course, there's financial risk, manual data, fat thumbs. It causes either the risk of financial cost, revenue leakage, revenue cost, uh, people making sure and reconciling spreadsheets. That's a real risk that we always need to think about. I'm not sure who's heard of the London whale incident, but that's where JP Morgan was using spreadsheets for trading. And the problem with that was a multi-billion-dollar loss to the business. And then finally, we've talked about it, scalability. There's a point at which Excel spreadsheets just run out of room to give what you need in a business to be successful. So there they
Mm,
are: risk, regulation, financial, and scalability. They're the big issues.
yeah, nice. Yeah. It,
And Dan, I think you've probably got a couple other thoughts from your perspective.
Yeah, no, thanks, Martin, and good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I guess I come at it from a slightly different perspective, and I definitely see the problems are being around collaboration, and then to Martin's point as well around scale. So, when you just have one person using a spreadsheet to independently complete tasks, generally there's not too many problems. But then as soon as that person needs to collaborate, they need to share the spreadsheet, they need to share the data, that's where you get, that's where you start running into the problems. And so some of them from my perspective would include things like data silos. So if you've got an operational live system, someone takes an export of that data and they're now operating on it in a spreadsheet. That is now a new, stale, siloed version of that data and of, what the truth is. So you can imagine an ops team's looking at one set of numbers that they have in a spreadsheet, and then maybe a sales team's looking at live data living in a CRM. They don't match, which can lead to confusion, and then ultimately it leads to bad decision making and to mistakes. Um, so, in fact, there was a group of universities on the east coast of Australia. They recently did a study around the usage of spreadsheets within business, and they
mm,
found that 94% of spreadsheets used in business decision making contain either errors or inconsistencies in their data compared to what exists in transactional systems, which causes operational mistakes and poses serious financial and auditability risks. Closely related to that, that with spreadsheets, there's generally either limited or no integration with other systems. And so it's basically a dead end. It doesn't talk to anything. And your team of people become like a human API that are copying and pasting data between either spreadsheets or other live systems. And this is error prone. It's boring. And because it's boring, it's error prone and it's a waste of time. Um, One of our customers operates in the grain trading industry, and before they started working with us, they had traders who were using spreadsheets to basically plan and initiate trades, and they were doing that across like dozens of different spreadsheets. Once we'd finished building what effectively became their grain trading platform, um, that all went away. They had that live transactional system with all the data living inside it, and it actually ended up with over 90 different integrations to internal and external systems. Lastly, the last maybe more meta issue that I see with using spreadsheets for business processes is that they're just not designed for that purpose. Like a spreadsheet is ultimately just a grid of data, and it has like formulas and it has macros, but it's not really built to power business processes in a way that is auditable and secure and robust. It can't automatically trigger approvals. It can't like send emails and notify people, and it can't perform. It can perform complex logic, but it can't do it in a way that's scalable, that's safe, and that's auditable. And so, I guess what I would say is that if you notice that your organization is using spreadsheets to really control those critical business processes, that's when the alarm bells should go off, and you should at least be considering, like, am I using the right tool for the job?
Yeah, nice. Okay, well, that's a pretty good definition on the problem there. So clearly, spreadsheets can be a problem, but what's the case for solving it now, and why should this be a priority?
Yeah, and that's true. And I don't want to be a henny penny, though. Not all the skies are falling in, but there's definitely two things to think about here. The first is the issue important and is it urgent? And the issue that we like to think about is what are the risks, what's the cost, what's the scalability problem, and most importantly, how is it impacting our customers? Uh, and so that helps us decide whether we deal with something now or whether we deal with something in the future. Because let's face it, everyone's using spreadsheets in the business. The question is, where do you start? And so from a risk perspective, it's not a hypothetical threat. It does happen. Manual mistakes, data breaches, and financial losses are very real as problems. So the big question is, what level of risk are you willing to take, and where might that risk be? Some good places to look might be your audit report, might be your cyber risk report, or mostly the business actually knows where the risk is. They're just been working that way for years. Then it's about cost, and there's certainly some long-term returns. But the question is who's involved, how much time is being spent, and am I getting out of it what I am putting into it? The build is always relatively easy and cheap relative to what you finally spend on it to maintain it.
Mm,
We've talked about the scalability barrier. That's real. The question is, where do your business want to go? And this is the alignment between spreadsheets and strategy.
mm,
So what are the spreadsheets that are holding you back from delivering on that new growth pillar? If growth depends on the spreadsheet, it probably tells you that you should be doing something about it. So that is the question of what is constraining my growth. And quite often it is an Excel spreadsheet or something where, for example, I can't service that new customer segment or I can't price up that new product that I'm trying to take to market. And then finally, that bumps into customer service. When our customers are happy, we're happy. And manual processes have a tangible impact on the customer experience. So for example, when we partner with a large Australian bank, their loan origination decision-making process took months. It relied on disparate systems, spreadsheets, and people. And today that process just takes minutes.
oh
So
wow.
the
Yeah.
question always is, what's the impact on customer service? And if you're winning on customer service, like many of us are, maybe this is something to look at where I can change the game for us.
Yeah, very nice. But guys, if it's so obvious, then why hasn't everyone like already done this?
Yeah, I might take this one. So, in my experience, it's not necessarily that people don't want to fix it. Um, it's probably the worry that the solution could be more painful or just as painful as the problem in the first place. So, just from talking to lots of different organizations, I guess some of the reservations that I've heard is that, they expect that replacing a spreadsheet with purpose-built software could be a big, expensive, multi-month sort of software development project. Um, they also think about like, what needs to be the role of IT within that project. A lot of organizations are constrained by the the ability to push through things through the IT department, and just adding another project onto the pile might not help when there's already a capacity issue there. The third would be what I would call analysis paralysis, where they know that there's all these different spreadsheets that are powering all these different processes, but they're all maybe a little bit interconnected. It's not necessarily that easy to know where to start, and therefore, you feel a little bit overwhelmed. Um, and then there's also, I guess, a couple of other fallacies. Like you've got the good enough fallacy, which is like, well, it's kind of working and it's not fully broken, so why don't we keep it going? You've also got the sunken cost fallacy, which is like, someone's probably spent hours, days, months, like building up this very nice spreadsheet that they really like using. And it feels
Yeah.
like a bit sad to throw that away.
Okay. But Daniel, for those that I guess feel overwhelmed, and don't really know where to start, can you share your sort of your blueprint for success and moving away from those spreadsheets?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, having a plan to move forward, I guess, is the key to getting started, like feeling that you've got the plan in mind. So I mean, at Clear Dynamics, we actually have a really clear sort of four-step process, a four-step blueprint that we've developed to kind of break this down, and then break it up into stages. So the way that we do it is first we do what we call like a discovery or an audit. And that's where it's really about uncovering everything, because you can't fix what you can't see. So, we start by mapping out those processes within a team or across multiple teams, and sort of, what systems are used and do they talk to each other, and what are the manual steps in those processes, and then often, where are those spreadsheets being used, either to power the whole thing or just to glue things together manually. Second, we identify like where the complexities are. So, there are often use cases of spreadsheets which are entirely appropriate. And so, it's sort of like we don't necessarily want to touch those, but it's about identifying the complex use cases where there's either like multiple spreadsheets being used or multiple people all working on the same spreadsheet. Like those are the ones you want to look at. There's also another class where you want to identify the spreadsheets that are risky. So, for example, like powering a process which needs auditability or has sensitive data, like payroll data or PII or sensitive PII. So those are the sort of spreadsheets that have security or privacy concerns. Um, or you could just be looking at the processes where there's a lot of manual process, where there's people copying and pasting things or manually doing things, and they're kind of holding the process together. So we started with the discovery. We're then identifying the appropriate places where you might want to remove the usage of spreadsheets. And then third is prioritization. So you're looking at that complexity, you're looking at the risks, you're looking at the potential efficiency gains, of all of the different use cases that you've mapped out. And then I personally like to map it out a little bit visually. Like you can usually get a kind of 2 by 2 matrix going and work out like which are the more important spreadsheets to tackle, or even just manual processes to tackle. Um, and and then how difficult those might be, and they kind of generally, once you map it out visually, then often you kind of becomes obvious what your highest impact efforts may be directed towards. And then finally, we always like to start with a pilot. So that's really where we're talking, we're trying to rapidly prove the value. And so we're actually working with the client right now, and they've just kind of selected, right, we've got this one, they know they've got dozens of spreadsheets all throughout the business that are all a little bit interconnected. But they've just selected the one spreadsheet that should be, I think it's going to be very clear how it improves like their operational efficiency, and it'll also improve the reporting. Um, and once we've proven that value, once they're seeing that return on investment, then they can move on to the next one. So,
Yeah.
just to summarize that, sort of like discover, identify, prioritize, and then pilot. And we've found that, to be a really effective methodology.
Yeah, nice. Okay, and probably seeing a good ROI anyway as well. So where should our audience today be looking within their organization
Yeah,
to
so I
start?
mean, it's kind of everywhere to a certain extent. Like perhaps the best way to answer this is to give you a couple of, a couple of the use cases that we've been working on recently. So
Hmm.
from an operations perspective, we've automated manufacturing job management and logistics.
Yeah.
In finance, we've done quite a few like source to pay and reconciliation processes. In sales and service, things like CPQ, CRM. Martin's already touched
Yeah.
on loan origination. We've done a grant management one. So the list kind of goes on, but the reality is that this probably touches many, if not all, parts of organizations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in those cases, right? So, what was it that Clear Dynamics brought to the table that set it apart from other solutions?
Yeah. Hey, great question. I think at our heart, we're an intelligent software development company, and it all rests on that word intelligent. What sits behind everything we do is something we call AOS, Artificial Intelligence Enterprise Operating System. What that means is we operate at the enterprise level. It's the complex, hard enterprise applications. And our proprietary AOS system, which is a mix of artificial intelligence and machine learning, gives us a real leg up in both speed and cost to be able
Mm.
to build these sorts of applications. There's a couple of things that's probably important for this group. You've got to make a decision about whether you want to do it yourself or whether you want to have someone do it for you. And in many cases, what we can do, and we did in all these cases, we did it for our customers in collaboration, but it meant that the customers, developers, and tech team can spend time on bigger, hairier elephants whilst we
Mm.
went to work onto the tail. We also know where the traps are. We've done over 160 use cases across 10 different industries. And because we do this day in, day out, we know how to start quick, we know how to solve the problems, and we need to consider things like change management, which is what we do all the time. And finally, because we use AI and automation, that allows us to ingest the logic of your worksheet as a blueprint, and from that, auto-generate that secure, compliant application that seamlessly integrates into the rest of your business.
Yeah. Okay.
And it
So,
all
Mark.
happens in weeks, not days, well, not years, which is fantastic.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, Martin, just looking beyond that, I guess that's kind of that first success. What's this what is this strategic ripple effect? Is it one less spreadsheet, or does it unlock something a lot bigger?
Yeah. And it's a network effect. You either believe in the network effect or you don't. And we
Mm.
do. We love seeing the impact of 1 + 1 = 3. And what happens is because we're a data first business, once we have the ability to be able to unlock your data across multiple applications and then give you access to do things with that data that you typically can't before. And so there's a network effect across data. The second is you create a flywheel. The tail of call it legacy applications and spreadsheets is quite long, but once you start dealing with that tail, the business responds positively. You're no longer just building problems, which is the place where most people start. You start building muscle, which gives you a leg up into the future. And then finally, it's a way of getting yourself future fit. It's a foundation for the future because we're data AI, data first, we're AI friendly. Yeah, that means that side by side with us, we can integrate our applications with AI agents. You end up being able to run them on clean, structured, real-time data and a platform with all the governance aspects that makes a big difference. So it's about building a scalable, efficient capability that sets you up for the future.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So look, we have time for one more question before we wrap up today. Because look, Martin, Daniel, this has been incredibly insightful. So for the leaders and the executives obviously listening today, what's the one practical next step that they should take this week?
Yeah, look, at least what we'd like to offer, we're passionate about dealing at this end of the market. It's boring, but it's the kind of sexy problem that we just love to solve.
Yeah.
And so what we'd love to offer anyone on the audience who comes back to us is a 1 hour, what we would call the spreadsheet audit. We sometimes call it the chaos audit. And that's where we can take you through in a broader context of your value chain or your business model, where the risks might be, and help you develop a tailored plan that works for you on how to deal with the big elephants and the tail of problems that you might be having in your business. No obligation. We're just passionate about securing the future of our customers and of Australian companies. So we'd love anyone on this audience to please take that up, and we'll send around an invite after this for this group of people. So that's
Yeah.
the chaos audit for anyone who's interested in turning chaos into calm waters.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be reaching out to everyone anyway over the next course of the week or so anyway for everybody here is on today. And just to gather your feedback on today's session, we're going to be running more of these as well and different key areas over the next 6 months and so. And so we'll certainly invite you out again. At that stage when we speak to you over the next week, if you want to set up a time to speak to Martin and Daniel, obviously we can take care of that and we'll get that scheduled in for you. Now, on that fine note, very insightful from you guys today. Martin, Daniel, I want to thank you for your time. It's been excellent, and I want to thank everyone today for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us. Thank you very kindly, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.